I was like, holy hell, is this what work is? Because I think resentment for me is the biggest killer of a business. But if a business has too much cash,
Ooh.
I think it can breed, if there's not a lot of discipline in how they're operating, it can breed complacency and waste.
Part of the beauty of sometimes being short on cash is being innovative and thinking very strategically about what you're doing.
And when that happened, it changed my whole perspective of everything. And I did a Vipassana meditation retreat soon after that, which reiterated this new awareness that nothing is permanent. Impermanence is all around us. And for me, if that thing that could change that I thought would never change did change, everything in my life could change. And it blew my mind.
Hello, crew. Let's talk about the climb and not just the peak. I'm Loveth, and this is Fayl Tales. And today I have with me Adam Murray. Adam is a strategist and facilitator who helps leaders and scale ups find clarity when things get messy. He's worked with teams navigating growth, ambiguity, and the kind of hard conversations that come with real change. What I love the most about Adam's approach is how he leans into uncertainty, not to fix it, but to learn from it. You've had quite an interesting background. How did we get here?
Yeah. Yeah, I asked myself that a lot. It definitely wasn't the path I expected or the one I would have chosen. And
What did you expect?
something a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more predictable, maybe, I don't know, a bit more successful in the traditional sense, but it's been amazing. Yeah, so I mean, and it's often like these really key moments that change things and opportunities missed and then things that are unlocked. But yeah, management consulting background, which led to depression, believe it or not, 2
I've
years
been
of
there.
yeah, it was pretty intense. I was like, holy hell, is this what work is?
Yeah.
But yeah, management consulting, stuck at that for too long and then moved to Sydney and got involved in small businesses, which I loved. A co-working space in the very early days, which I invested in and managed.
Nice.
Did some importing from Milan, did some retail, bicycle and scooters in Woolloomooloo in Sydney. And then got into the startup game. So ran a startup inside a consulting business. Then had some time off, started a podcast as well. Created a breath mint business of all things. Consulted to startups as well. And then most recently was at a tech scale-up called Culture Amp. Now, yeah, doing my own thing.
Wow. I'm keen to hear a little bit about this breath mint thing.
Yeah.
What is it and what was it about?
Yeah, so it was about, I took a gap year
Mhm.
in like 2015. My kids were starting school and I just thought, yeah, it's a good time to, take a break. I never did that at the end of university. And it was pretty amazing what it unlocked for me. All of a sudden I was having conversations that I would never have had because my routine had changed. And I was starting to get in sync with the routine of others who had totally different routines to the 9 to 5 that I was so used to. And a world opened up to me. And so there was a lot of time in cafes having these great conversations, which was the origins of the podcast as well. But sitting in these cafes, I was often like, I need breath mints. I'm going to see this other person. I need to go to the 7-Eleven to get them. How am I going to fit that all in? And I wanted to design a product that would not feel out of place in a Melbourne cafe, a breath mint product. And so I did a bunch of research, found some friends, traveled up to Ballarat to do a whole lot of product research, and it was a lot of fun.
Wow.
We kind of created this amazing tasting mint in this really cool package that had some other uses for people as well. But we put artwork inside of it to kind of promote and support local emerging artists. We sold like 30,000 tins, which was really
Whoa.
cool, but couldn't quite get the momentum that we needed to sustain it over a longer period of time. Yeah.
Nice. So you closed that up?
Close that up. Yeah, we did.
Wow.
Yeah, it was hard and disappointing to do that because I've still got, as I guess a lot of people who start a physical product business do, and it doesn't quite get there. There's a lot of stock
Oh,
that is.
I will take some off your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring some in. But I still love them. They're delicious, and but yeah, one day I might reboot it. Who
Why
knows?
not?
Yeah,
That's super interesting.
yeah.
So you've worked with a lot of scale ups, and at that stage, it's really, really interesting because they're growing fast and it's very exciting for them. They've sort of pushed past that startup part of the story. but they're also breaking very fast as well.
Mm.
What's the first thing you tend to notice when an organization starts to lose clarity through that transition?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is that maybe at the maybe I'll start at the more less extreme level. I was consulting to a business, and they were just finding that number one, their showcases were really boring. So this is a tech business going from like they were bootstrapped to about 20 people, and I find that 20 people is a bit of a breaking point in
Why do
businesses.
you think that?
I don't know. I find that there's these certain numbers, and maybe it's changed now based on, just different operating models and things like that. But historically, for me, I would come in and see that around 20, whatever had got them to 20 people was often very successfully done, but it wasn't the thing that was going to help them to be successful beyond 20. Systems were starting to become really strained. Just how product was being developed was becoming strained. Another one's 50, I think, as well, 50 to 80, and then another one like 120 to 150. But this particular business, they were at 20, and they were finding that their product development processes were getting really stuck.
Okay.
And so they had massive backlogs. They never got to the things they wanted to get to. Their showcases were super boring.
Mm.
And that was one of the really key signs for me that, okay, they're obviously really successful, profitable, bootstrapped, but something's going to have to change here because of this stagnation that was creeping into their product because they were trying to do everything and didn't have
Okay.
focus. At the other end of the scale, I think it's when things are worse, I notice that resentment starts to build up between founders in particular.
Okay.
And that's a telltale sign for me. And as a consultant, one of my key principles, I think, in all the work that I do is how can the founders of this business avoid resentment? Because I think resentment for me is the biggest killer of a business. Well, biggest killer of a founder team, which often then leads to difficulty in the business, of course, as well. And so whether it's in the very early stages where it's understanding maybe equity split or the roles that people are going to take on, like having that, asking oneself that question, do I feel resentful right now? Or is this other person feeling resentful? And asking that at really key moments, I think is an important question. And when I sense that in a founder team, I know that something needs to be resolved here or this is trouble down the track.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. You've seen a lot of companies on the edge of collapse or major pivots. What are the most common warning signs when things are going wrong? And I think that ties really beautifully into what you were just talking about
Yeah.
resentment. That could be the first, I guess.
Yeah,
Are there any others?
that's a real telltale sign. I think another one, I mean, a little bit tongue in cheek, but if a business has too much cash,
Ooh.
I think it can breed, if there's not a lot of discipline in how they're operating, it can breed complacency and waste.
Okay.
And it can mask a lot of underlying difficulties that they may be having, but just because they can spend money to grow
Yeah.
or spend money to, you know, uh, I guess, cover over the cracks or ignore the cracks for a period of time because the cash is enabling them to do that. So yeah, that's a warning sign for me. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's problems, but it's like if there's not real discipline and rigor, and yeah, just I guess almost forgetting that cash can solve a lot of things in the short term, that can be a problem. I think another one is just confirmation bias, where people are looking at the metrics but not seeing the reality of the situation and seeing what they want to see, and feeling that it'll be okay without listening to a diversity of voices across the organization that might be the canary in the coal mine because they're closer to what is actually happening. If those outliers aren't being listened to, that can be, I think, another source of concern.
Yeah, that's really interesting. How much money would you say is like getting to the point of it? And I know it's very arbitrary and kind of differs by sector and the company, but is there like a metric you have in the back of your mind or a gauge as to when you start to question whether that's really
Yeah, I don't think
needed?
it's an amount. I think
Okay.
it's more what's the feeling that a certain amount of money, and I think it'll be different for every business, but the
Yeah.
feeling that it gives them, like, is this a too relaxing amount of money, amount that's, because I think there always needs to be I don't think it's great for founders to be thinking like like I'm on the cusp here of this being a massive failure and that's going to impact me terribly
Mm.
in a financial sense. And I think at the other extreme, it's like I'm so comfortable. It doesn't really matter too much about how we're going according to, obviously, it always does. Investors are always going to be interested in that kind of thing. But if there's a complacency about things, I think that's terrible as well. There needs to be a little bit of stress there
Mm.
all the time, a bit of friction. Too much is bad. Bad decisions will be made.
Of course.
Founders will be making short-term decisions as opposed to, meeting short-term targets, but setting the foundation for the future
Yeah.
as well.
I
Yeah.
guess part of the beauty of sometimes being short on cash is being innovative and thinking very strategically about what you're doing. And if you have
Yeah.
excess cash that you're not using wisely, you kind of lose a bit of that drive, maybe a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it can also, I think that's 100% right. And then, we talk about, it's uh, it's a cliche really to say that constraints breed creativity.
Mm.
And so, particularly early on, that the constraint of cash can really spark some amazing things and maybe uh, delay making important decisions until technology catches up as well, or innovation catches up, or the market catches up too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting. And from your experience, what separate the teams that can recover and bounce back from the teams that don't and just fall apart?
Yeah. I think it touches on something that I mentioned about outliers
Hmm.
as well. So I think, and that speaks to being able to sense reality. There's two parts to it, I think. The teams that can do the best at understanding their current context and really grappling with, okay, what is actually happening here, orienting themselves to their business, to the external environment as well, whether that be at one layer, suppliers, customers, at the next layer out, the more broader context in the environment around them. I think sensing their environment is key in the
Mm.
most accurate way as possible. I think part of that is there's different ways of doing that. One is through warm data that I talk about, and that's a Nora Bateson um, term, and she's a complexity practitioner in the world of complex adaptive systems. And warm data is that narrative-based data, the data of the experience of people, particularly when it's coming from a diversity of sources. And that could even be customers, it could be suppliers, but it's definitely people that are closest to the grassroots of the organization. So I think the teams and the organizations that recover best are the ones that are sensing reality best. And that often means drawing from the outliers, as I say, the people that are closest to the reality of the situation and not separated from it through hierarchy or just busyness. And then the other element is those that, can sense the reality, but also can predict or have the ability to learn, take a guess at where things are going, learn along their way. I don't think there's a way to predict accurately. Perhaps there is, but it's about making educated guesses, running experiments, having a way of operating that enables a team to test their ideas, do more of what works and less of what doesn't work, and build that into the cadence of the organization.
For sure. So continuously seeking feedback and then actually implementing that feedback and changing and
Yeah, that's
pivoting.
right. Yeah, spot on. And
Interesting.
having ways to capture that, learn from that.
Yeah.
Once again, continually sourcing from the outliers and the other
Yeah.
parts of the organization.
Oh. And can you share a story? Could be anonymous of a company that hit a crisis point, but managed to turn things around. And what changed in that situation?
Yeah. I don't know if I've come across that many organizations that have hit a real crisis. Can I talk about a
Okay.
personal
Of
story here of
course,
one that
even
I've run?
better.
Yeah, okay, great. So I mentioned that I moved to Sydney and ran a co-working space up there in the early days of co-working spaces. This business actually called itself a serviced office,
Okay.
which was a very quaint term for a co-working space before they became cool. Here in Melbourne, the Inspire 9 was the real, I don't know, the hotspot or the innovator around co-working spaces, which I think were sort of springing up simultaneously in different places around the world. But in Richmond, which is where Culturamp actually started through Inspire 9, was this pretty amazing hotbed of startups, like places like there's a bunch of businesses around Melbourne that came out of this. But the one in Sydney that I ran, invested in, was it was a very high end, beautifully designed. Probably I think it won best office design at some interior design or interior architecture awards. And I was running this business, and I came up. It was actually my next door neighbor. Uh, I went to school with his wife, and we lived next door to each other. And he said, "Can you come and run this for me?" I was looking for a real change. I was in management consulting, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "Come in." He said, "My general manager's just quit. I don't know how to run a business. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a visionary, but I'm not an operator." So I came in and said, "Yep, I'd love to do that," without knowing too much about it. He was a very convincing salesperson.
But it was a way out of consulting. So
100%. Yeah, I was looking for a way, and it was like, this is amazing.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I went up there, and, organizations are so good at onboarding these days. When people
Yeah.
come on board, there's like a whole process, and there's getting to know the business.
Policies and
Yeah, that's right. And just getting context. For me, it was none of that. It was like, here's your desk. The other general manager left in a bit of a hurry. Good luck. Like, here's a login for the email address. Here's a pile of invoices. Yeah, what are you going to do? And I was just like, oh, man, what do I do in this situation? So I sort of tried to understand things, first of all, get to know the accounts, get to know some of the staff. There was only one other staff member. Get to know the clients, having a few like social gatherings and parties and things like that to do that. What I quickly realized was it wasn't a profitable business.
Okay.
There was plenty of vacant space in there. The finances were in disarray. Was spending like way too much money. And so my job was really that. And I think that's one of the really important things, that word orientation, or orienting ourselves to reality. And for me, that meant getting a clear sense of the metrics. And because I had an analytics and data background, that came quite naturally to me, even though small business may not have at the time, particularly sales didn't. But I was able to reorganize the accounts, understand, okay, how much do we owe? And getting a really clear picture of occupancy levels, how sales come through, building a CRM. So that was just some basic knowledge of, where are we right now? What does this actually look like? And from that, I was able to make some good decisions about, okay, we need to cut this stuff. This is working really well. And then over a period of, it took, sort of 12 to 18 months, we turned it into a really profitable business. We opened a new floor. 2 years later, we opened another floor as well.
Wow.
Another year after that, we moved to a new location. And it was built upon, and I think it was also having a consistent person in the role was really important, which was myself. But the first thing was getting clarity on where are we now, because nobody really knew.
And so when did it hit the crisis point?
I mean, that was the
That
crisis
was
when I started.
okay.
Yeah, it was like, this
Wow,
is
okay.
because the general manager had left. They just walked out. They were quite frustrated. All the occupants were freaking out. It's like, is this business going to be viable? They were ready to walk out. Like, there was, as I said there, it wasn't profitable at that stage. It was amazing and had a lot of potential, but it was at the point where this business could actually go under.
But it obviously had a lot of potential and needed a few key things introduced. So kudos to you for saving it.
Oh, yeah, thank you, yeah.
How long did you spend in that business?
So 3 years full time, and then
Wow.
I started, I bought into the business as well, and then started doing some other things with my business partner there. So I started working a bit more part-time, which was we imported scooter helmets from Italy, and we started a really cool scooter and bicycle store as well.
Cool. Cool. Interesting. What's something you wish more founders did earlier before things start to spiral?
Yeah. There's this conversation, I call it a co-founder alignment conversation, which I often facilitate with founders. And I think it's founders can do this themselves as well. And it's a type of thing that works well for 2 people or 20 people. And it's a particular, and it's a warm data conversation. And the way it works is that through storytelling, there's a negative and positive story that people tell. So I ran this recently for a group of owners of a gym chain in Melbourne, and they've been away to Bali and had a great time, but hadn't had some really important conversations. And so I got them together, split them into 2 groups of 2, and said, okay, you're going to tell each other a story, and the person who's talking is not allowed to be interrupted. The other person's just going to write what they're noticing, what they're sensing, what they see is missing. And the person's going to tell a story in 12 months' time we're in Bali together again. And this is what I hope I'm saying about this business. And similarly, we're in Bali in 12 months' time, and this is what I'm afraid I'll be saying about the business. And that positive and negative question, it's surprising. It's so simple, but it's surprising how much depth it reveals and things that haven't probably been spoken about, but have been latent there for quite some time. And the other element of it is being listened to without being interrupted, I think really frees people up to access
Yeah.
deeper thoughts. And so that's the process. People listen to each other, and then there's a process for synthesizing what comes out of that and
Mm.
distilling it into, okay, here's some things that we can just discuss now and tick off. And here are some deeper conversations that we have because we're misaligned here, or I'm very surprised that you said that thing. Let's drill into that. And a whole lot of different things can come out of it, and it's very context specific, of course. But I think those kind of conversations are rare. And I think if more founders had them,
Mm.
more of the problems would be anticipated early and
Yeah.
mitigated. Yeah.
Which sounds really obvious, but we're humans and we often just avoid those hard conversations. I'm really keen to get a deeper understanding into how you facilitate those hard conversations. What kind of environment do you create, or what tools do you give founders to then go on themselves and have those really tough and uncomfortable conversations? You talked about the how you framed the positive and the negative. Are there any other tools that you use to facilitate that?
Yeah. So, one of the important things about this approach is to, like, particularly in larger groups, is to maximize groupthink at the start and minimize
Okay,
it at the end. So,
explain.
so people often talk about we don't want groupthink, but groupthink can be really helpful to accentuate differences and to uncover those outliers. So often in the middle, at the beginning of this type of workshop, particularly in a larger group, but it can also be with a group of co-founders, is put the people together that are more similar, work together more closely, and they can tell those stories together. And so, I mean, part of the facilitation is just making sure that they're listening to each other and able to have time to dive into these conversations. But to do so through that lack of interruption and through keeping those groups together to start with, it maximizes the amount of that might influence each other in what they're saying
Mm.
because we're in the same area and like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. But you got two groups or three groups or four groups doing that, then it starts to polarize a bit. And so that's an important thing. So the process is tell those stories, and then once the groups have done their thing, everyone walks around silently and looks at the other groups. So there's no discussion or interaction at this point, but people are observing what the other groups said, and they're writing down four things. They're writing down what's the same across these groups, whether it's two groups or two people, whatever it is. What's the same? What's different? What's missing? So what is nobody said? And what's surprising? Like what's an outlier? What's like popping for me here? And it's that point, once those things are distilled and people have talked about them and say they're up on a wall on post-it notes, that's when we we minimize groupthink and we start to then have good discussions about, okay, what are the key themes here, and what are we going to distill? And I like to think about things in terms of what are we going to do now, next, and later. That classic roadmap approach. And so from that distillation of missing, the same, surprising, different, what are we going to do about that? And it's through maximizing groupthink, minimizing it, and then distilling it to the most important things that a lot of magic actually happens.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a therapy session for the whole team.
I know it's funny how much I was working with a husband and wife team, and it's like, yeah, it's like we're in couples counseling doing this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I sometimes think about myself as a business therapist, but yeah, definitely not a therapist.
What do you enjoy the most about that process that you take founders on?
Yeah, it's funny because I would literally do this stuff for free. Like I feel, so it's for me, it's such an honor to create an environment where people can have a high quality conversation. Like I get a lot of joy out of that. And then for them to have these light bulb moments about, and normally they're just small changes or interventions that can unlock friction, unlock flow within their business in a quite profound way. And so this, for that gym I was talking about, I mean, it might be really basic, but they weren't using like a task management tool uh, that was easy to use or obvious about what actually everybody was doing and why. And so I just implemented Trello. Now, most people be aware of Trello, but they weren't. And so helping them just use a tool like that, like unlocked everything for them. They're like, all of a sudden they could be aware, they could plan, they could hand things over. And so I get so much satisfaction out of, because I've got, yeah, like a pretty bizarre background that enables me to draw on, things from a lot of different fields. And so being able to apply something like that to someone, it might feel obvious to me, but not to them. And then it liberates them is, yeah, beautiful.
That is really beautiful. And I guess pivoting to you personally, in hindsight, is there a failure that comes to mind that you're actually grateful for in the long run?
Yeah, I think all of them.
It's made you who you are today.
Yeah, really. And like I mean, because it seems a bit glib, I suppose, but yeah, and I'll drill into some specific ones, but uh, I don't know. I think that there's this idea I've been wrestling with lately, which is about everything we come across in life is an initiation of sorts. Like I got myself into it, and it's an initiation process to find a way through it as well. And I don't always feel this at the time, of course. Like, failure hurts so badly. Uh, um, but yeah, to be able to get to the point where, like, okay, and I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, actually, and he was saying, Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant's mantra is, "I love failure.
Yeah.
I love it." I'm like, yeah, man, I don't feel that most of the time, but it's so true, and that's, I guess, a philosophy I'm trying to adopt. I mean, a really personal failure that rocked my world is I got divorced when I was, about 10 years ago. And for me, it was just such a fundamental thing that would never change in my life. Like it was, yeah, it was just the one thing that was uncertain. Sorry, completely certain. There was never any uncertainty about it. And when that happened, it changed my whole perspective of everything. And I did a Vipassana meditation retreat soon after that, which reiterated this sense, this new awareness that nothing is permanent. Impermanence is all around us. And for me, if that thing that could change that I thought would never change did change, everything in my life could change. And it blew my mind. And although it was incredibly difficult and it changed my whole world and it took me on a completely different path, and I've done some of the most adventurous things I could even imagine. I've been in situations where I'm like, how did I get here? Like if people knew me from high school and they saw where I am now, they would be shocked.
In a positive way?
Well, they might be shocked in a negative way. For me, it was like, yeah, this is amazing. Like this is just the best. So yeah, I mean, there's still pain there, but it's a failure, if you like. I felt it was a failure at the time that has like, yeah, been like a coming of age for me.
Wow, that's very, very insightful. Thanks so much for this conversation. It's been very interesting to especially get a perspective from the scale-ups.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
This is Fayl Tales, real stories and real lessons. If you enjoyed this episode, share with a friend and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the full episode on YouTube, and make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok and LinkedIn to see more clips and get behind the scenes content. Bye.